Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning, everybody.
It's another week of Buy Here Pay Here business.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's going to be a beautiful week of Buy Here Pay Here business. So,
How do you know?
Because it just always, it's Monday, and your attitude starts the week. So it's going to be a great week of Buy Here Pay Here business. Yeah, exactly. I hope that all of you mothers out there had a lovely Mother's Day. It was delightful here. I had a lot of family over, and it was just so nice. I'm a real lover of I'm a lover of spending time with family, making memories. So
it was it was a wonderful weekend altogether. Got a few things done around the house, and but we do love our mothers, and we are glad to have the opportunity to honor them on occasion, including this one. She's great mom. So we got a couple of things to remind everyone. Next week is Compliance Unleashed in Fort Worth.
And that's a worthwhile conference to go to.
And it's not just boring compliance stuff. Steve Levine tells us that's about helping dealers learn to protect their assets. And so you got to be sure to get yourself there and learn all the stuff, not just regulatory compliance. So many of you will be there. We had kind of hoped to go, but it's not going to work out for us to get there. Any other announcements? We didn't make a very big deal last week about the fact that we marked one full year of the morning show. That was the 11th of May.
And we collectively have not missed a single Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. I have a few, but Jim has been so gracious to bring on a guest host or whatever on the times that I'm not able to make it, but a full year. I feel like that's something that is pretty, it's a good reason to celebrate.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think that happened is we got an invitation to speak and bring the morning show to the Arizona conference. They've got that coming up in August, so we'll get you information on those soon.
Yeah, we did that last year. It was a great
group of people.
Group of people. So we're looking forward to that.
Of course. Shall we dive into our repo topic?
Let's dive.
So let's remind everybody, the month of May, we're focused on collections. So we're going to continue that theme today. We've got some speakers lined up. We've got Maggie Pagesic coming on Friday to talk to us about collection phone calls. And then we've got some other guests in the wings for the coming weeks here on collections. So join us if you're able. For today, we want to talk about repos and when is the right time to pull the trigger. So when can we be sure, and I'm saying 110% sure that we've done everything, it's time to move toward repossession.
And this is probably one of the most, it's one of the more important decisions. I mean, outside of how you underwrite a deal, it's a big decision. I mean, you're deciding to stop a relationship. And
I might explain for those who've been tuning in regularly so far this month, this is a little bit out of order. Like there's quite a lot more stuff, obviously, to talk about before we jump to repossession. But we moved here because of availability of certain guests. And so it's a little out of order. But for today, we'll just talk about how to make that judgment and what really comes into play. And before we talk about repos, first of all, we have to recognize that the repossession rules can vary by state. Like what you're required to do to notify the customer before you repossess can vary. So you're going to have to refer to your own local laws around this stuff. For today, we're not trying to be attorneys. We're not attorneys, so we can't give you legal advice. We're just here to talk about, from business practice standpoint, what are the things we need to know as collection supervisors, as dealers, before we take that serious action. Because, when we go out and do a repossession, that's such an upsetting experience. There's a whole lot of things at play when that happens. And so we just need to be careful to not be making snap judgments and or judgments based on incomplete information. So that puts us in a difficult spot when we do something as serious as a repossession and we get something wrong. on that, and that's potentially puts us in a bad place.
And I just want to say something outside. I'm the newbie,
Mm-hmm.
and it's disturbing, and it feels a little bit predatory when people proceed with a repossession with any sense of glee.
Oh, that's true. Good point.
And it really should be something that from a consumer's standpoint of, please don't make me do this. Please don't. And it breaks my heart that I had to do this.
You mean as a dealer, you don't want to have to take that tone. You want to take that position with the consumer.
It's from observing.
Okay. Oh, I see.
As a consumer observing, it's disturbing when I see a sense of glee about repossessions.
Yeah, for me, when I see that, when you see people kind of celebrating, a repossession, that tells me, one, that we're either we have maybe a flawed strategy, or we're taking the thing way too personally. Like, it's like when you're celebrating, and look, we get it. Customers can be frustrating, and they can do deceptive things, and it can be, really frustrating. But I think it's still something that we want to be watchful about, because, as we always talk about, those things really come from the top down. So as a dealer, if we're, celebrating those things.
And I think, though, that, like, from one of the things that we've learned, and I've been told this through a lot of different business coaches and all of that, is that anything you put out there in social media lives in social media. You can't make it disappear.
Good point.
And so when there are comments or social media posts or whatever that take a stance of, we triumphed or glee or anything like that through the repossession process, that is, I think that's something that we just need to really be careful of, about whatever we're putting out there. Regardless, it's just, if it's in social media, then it's accessible.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, any of these kind of topics, there are exceptions and there are rules. And we always just try to focus on the rules, because, we can't go through every possible scenario that is an exception, problem customer, a customer that's skipping on you. Even though it feels like it consumes a lot of our day sometimes, the reality is those are still the exceptions. That's still not the case most of the time. So as a result, it's just important for us to recognize there are things that we can monitor to make sure, and I'm really just speaking primarily to dealers today, but listen, we recognize that our audience is mostly dealers, probably certainly some industry people, some managers perhaps, but there's no reason a consumer couldn't hear the stuff we're broadcasting. It goes out on YouTube, it goes everywhere. And so it's really a question of, and we're okay with that. Like, we're being transparent. We're trying to make sure that if I were a dealer, I would want to know, and of course I've been a dealer and had to make these kind of decisions. And I always ask new dealers, new clients of ours to say, think about, if you get to the place where you have to repossess, you want to know that to sleep well at night, you want to know that you've done everything reasonable to give the customer an opportunity to be successful.
Yeah.
And of course, there will come a point sometimes where we have to move to repossession, but I'm simply saying there are some things that I don't hear people talk about enough. And so I want to make sure we get those covered today. When I think about, again, just from a business practice standpoint, what are the things that potentially cause an ugly scenario that we'd like to avoid? So for me, one of the things we want to talk about was providing a repo checklist. Okay, so a pre-repo checklist. Like, this is the things that we would go through as a collection supervisor or dealer before ordering the repossession. Okay.
So that it's not just something, well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? It's like, are all of these things, have they been checked off?
Right.
And so it also, like I said, not attorneys, compliance, all of that. But if you have things that are a process and you're abiding by the process every single time, it closes a lot of loops.
And some of you are going to say, I've already got a repo checklist, Jim. I'm going to suggest to you that I may offer you one or two things that belong on that checklist that you don't have on there. So let's kind of go through them. The first thing would be obvious. We should not repossess unless the customer is past due. Okay. So people say, well, that's pretty obvious. Well, you can, there are scenarios, and I don't want to go through them today, but there are scenarios where you might choose to repossess even when the account is current. But again, that's an exception. We don't need to spend a lot of time there today. So we're just dealing with those situations where the customer is past due. So, and you'll say, well, that seems fairly straightforward and obvious. Okay, well, if you started this process on Friday and then you came in and want to finish the repo checklist on Monday and the customer paid online on Sunday night, are we certain, have we re-verified that the customer is past due at the time that we order this repossession? So that's step one. Then the next one is, has the customer ever been this past due before? Okay. So let's think about
why.
Okay. Let's think about the significance of that one, because this is where just basic enforcement of accounts. This is why I say, let's not let customers get too far past due, because if we're now repossessing a customer at 17 days past due, but their history, you go to their ledger in their account and look at their summary, and you find that you've allowed them to pay 23 days past due in the past, and now you're repossessing at 17 days. Again, not an attorney over here, but do I need to be an attorney to say that I feel if I'm the consumer, I got a problem? If you allowed me to pay 23 days past due before, and now you're repossessing me at 17 days, what's going on? Like, is that because you had a management change? You got a new collector in there?
Yeah.
You're just tired of me running past due, and so now you're going to change practices? Because as a non-attorney, I can tell you, from a pure business standpoint, and take it outside the buy here, pay here business. If I'm going to change practices, I've been managing your account in a certain way, and now I'm going to change the way that I manage your account. I'm going to change my enforcement practices. I really have an obligation to notify you. I have an obligation, a business obligation. Forget the legal part. I'm just saying, it's in fairness. I need to let you know if I'm changing practices on you.
Yeah.
Right.
Email.
So it's whatever, this is part of the ones that I think, I don't see it on very many repo checklists.
Well, let me ask you something here too, because we're talking about they're on the repo checklist for Monday, but they paid Sunday. That's like a weekend thing. Yeah. But if they're on the repo checklist for Monday and they call Monday to make arrangements, how does communication with the customer weigh into this?
It's important. Like it's.
Are we mostly looking at I'm going to repossess? There's been no communication.
Generally speaking, well, when you say no communication, how long has it been since the last communication? There's probably been some communication. Sometimes the communication is one way. So let's think about it in terms of what is the last meaningful dialogue we had with the customer? What information do we have from that conversation that that we can go on? And most times repossessions are going to move forward because the customer has failed to communicate. They've either failed to follow through on some understanding. Maybe it was a verbal understanding, which, by the way, we'll talk about that, but let's stay away from verbal. I mean, I know big collection departments, big teams running big queues, you're not going to, I'm just telling you, if you get into a he said, she said, and you repossess somebody's car, and no, I said Friday after, because I get paid every other Friday. And so I promised, a Friday,
the next
24th,
Friday,
not the 17th. I just don't want to be in a he said, she said situation. I'd rather have that thing in writing every time. And so today's day and age with digital signatures, it's so easy to shoot out something, and let's make sure we've got an understanding here. And it's also easier to tell the customer, we do not have an understanding until I have your signature on this. This is, we just don't accept verbal. So if I have that practice from the beginning, that's one thing. We're kind of getting off track a little bit. It's like, whatever the language is, whatever the understanding is, we're probably enforcing and you're probably just acting because the communication has dropped off.
Yeah.
Okay. So that means that I would want to show, and this is another thing that I don't find on very many repo checklists, because I'm not sure people understand the impact of this. When we look at an account, what record do we have? The account's now 24 days past due. most it's ever been past due, fine. We can act based on that. But in that 24 days, what does the record show? Not what the collector told me verbally. What does the account record show in terms of phone calls? We made a phone call to the customer. We left a voicemail.
Texts,
and what does it tell us? Hopefully some people are using systems that are pretty capable and recording the phone calls or whatever. But I'm saying who's ever ordering that repossession, dealer, collection supervisor, needs to look very carefully at that log of activity since the customer became past due. What effort have we made? Even the unsuccessful efforts. What effort have we made? What can we show that we have done to give that customer every opportunity to communicate with us and resolve this delinquency?
Okay? So what I'm like looking at this list, are they delinquent? Have they ever been more delinquent? Is it within your written policy?
Right.
Which also says that there should be like a written policy.
Sure.
And then are there sufficient record or are there efforts logged? I mean, what has been, and I get, one of the things I get from that is if it's like, well, it's 16 days past due, there hasn't been any communication, but we've tried once to reach out to them. It's like, no. Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, if I'm the collection supervisor and the collector's sitting there saying, I've called them 4 times in the last 3 days, but there's only one phone call logged in the system, that's a problem. And so let's make sure that sound like we got a problem that we need to address with a collector, not the customer perhaps, because this is where we get ourselves in trouble by taking such a serious action based on, this is why I call it incomplete information.
Yeah.
It's like if we don't log it, and we hope our system logs it, but if a system doesn't capture outbound text messages, doesn't capture responses from customers, doesn't capture the record any outbound phone calls, any of that stuff, then we have to log it ourselves. And there are a lot of systems out there that require that. Like they're going to require us to go in and manually log, made a phone call, send a text message, whatever. I'm just saying that the system, this is where I think a collector needs to do or a collection supervisor or dealer needs to make a thorough look through, what does the record show? Do we really have a good track record of communicating with this customer? Because if we are basically in a place where we are acting and we don't have the same log, like we haven't given the customer every effort, we haven't made them aware of ways to resolve this, then we just need to look at the thing and say, what is reasonable? Have we tried email? I mean, what can we do? Obviously, whatever we do, we need to be compliant. We got to stay within the rules of compliance on collections. And Maggie will talk to us more about that on Friday about how that works on the phone call side. But it's like, just irrespective of that, just make sure that we have an ample log to say, look, anybody who looks at this would say, we've made every effort, text messages, phone calls, whatever.
Yeah, we talked Friday too. Bill was on the show. Bill Elizondo, who's the senior 20 group moderator for NIADA, and we were kind of talking about communication and all of that. And one of the things that we collectively were like, yeah, that's a pretty decent idea, is if your CRM has the capability of sending video, like a little video message, you can have a whole library of video messages from the collector to the collection supervisor to the dealer themselves of like, please reach out to us, or whatever. So there's, that's a really, I think, people are, I think when they know that they don't have the ability to pay, are more likely to listen to a message or watch a video than they are to answer a phone call.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
And I think we never expect to end up in this situation, but fast forward, imagine that you repossess a customer's car today, and 3 months from now, you're in court justifying your action because your customer, hired an attorney, got some sort of action, and now we're having to defend our practice. So I think for me, if I were a dealer and Steve Levine were my attorney, I would be trying to give Steve Levine all of the ammunition that he might need to defend me in that situation. And a part of that for me goes to goodwill and intent. And while Steve, said so much in our Tote the Note podcast and when he came visit on the morning show a while back, that those things can come into play when you can demonstrate some goodwill. So the video, in my mind, obviously it needs to be compliant. It needs to not compromise anybody's.
So anyone could see it, but it's just like so it's not, you're late. Yeah. But it's like, please reach out. We need to.
And it's going to be viewed the same way that anybody would listen to a voicemail. They would watch the video. So it's going to be similar in terms of the compliance element. But it's like, I think what you can accomplish there is tone and the look on your face. And so this is what I mean by goodwill, right? And showing some goodwill and some effort to bring a good faith attitude to the thing. And we're trying over here to resolve it. And so I think if I can show that video, hey, Your Honor, look at this. We sent this video to the customer at 1 day late. We sent it again on 7 days late. We sent this video, and so the judge would look at that and say, why didn't you call him?
Yeah.
Why didn't you call them? I mean, they're clearly over here trying to resolve the thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the case that you're trying to make before you move toward repossession, because it's just so serious. It's just the impact. And we're going to do, I haven't even told you yet, one of the other topics that we want to bring for the end of the month. She just smiles because I do that to her. But
all the time.
But because I have these ideas at 6 a.m. And so I put them in my notes.
Thank you for not waking me up.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah. Hey, I had an idea. So I want to talk about belongings and repossessions.
Oh, did you see my little note here? Because I agree, because when we do coaching, there are a few things that we really encourage dealerships to do that are part of not necessarily the closing, but that are part of the experience of being in the dealership. So
we'll talk about that, because there are some real vulnerabilities around repossessions and the belongings that are in the vehicle. So we want to talk about that one specifically in a kind of a post-repo scenario. But we're going to come back before the close of May and talk more about how to manage accounts day to day. We've got some guests coming who can help us kind of walk through that. So we want to walk through the day-to-day account management and how to best, get customers resolved quickly, get some sort of understanding in place. We also probably need to talk about partial payments, because you saw that post went out. We did a poll a week and a half or so ago on one of the Facebook groups.
Who does partial payments? And it was predominantly we do partial payments. There were very few that said, nope, no partial payments.
Yeah. And so if anybody hears this and you're a dealer who's on one side or that or the other, and you'd like to talk about it, join us, because I think it'd be fun to have dealers from both camps, in a conversation around that, because I really just want to understand if you're a dealer who does not accept partial payments, how did you arrive at that policy, and why just choose to take that position? I just want to hear it from someone. Where'd that information come from, and how is it that you believe that serves you? And so we just want to hear from it.
And one of the beautiful things about us meeting so many different dealers is, in a lot of ways, there's no hard and fast, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, because different things work for different people. And it depends on some of the questions that we typically ask. It's like, well, how do you want to be known in your community? What kind of relationship do you want to have with your customer? Well, and so you take them through those filters, and it's like, and having a really hard stance can really work for someone, having a more flexible stance. And I think that when, we've been working with a client and putting together a new job description for collectors, and pay plan and job description. And one of the things that Jim always puts in a collection description is the term bend without breaking, and that it's being flexible enough without breaking.
It's the approach that we recommend, but that's obviously wrapped up in a lot of the, what we call the white hat teachings. Yes. It's like, it has a lot to do with playing a long game and all these kind of things. Like but I'm not discounting anybody else's strategy. I'm just saying we recommend that because we recommend a long-term approach, and we feel like that's a way to have long-term success.
Yeah.
So there are things like that. We recognize business practices are going to vary. People's strategy varies, and how they choose to operate as a business is one of the beautiful things about Buy Here, Pay Here. We get to do that. I personally would like to see, if this is exaggerated, but if you're a dealer who says we never accept partial payments and we always repossess when the account becomes 8 days past due, well, I would hope you at least tell the customer that before they sign the contract and take delivery. Just, communicate to them what your expectations are.
And communicate that when,
so that they can make a choice. I sign up for that or I don't sign up for that. Just let them know what the practice is. And so I think before they step into the contract that, in fairness, instead of just hitting them with it, at day 8, I think you have to, kind of give them some understanding of how to avoid repossession. So there's a ton. I think, we can probably wrap up there, Michelle. I think there's so much more to talk about. We certainly want to come back and talk about some of the things around. Like, I also want to make sure we work in by the close of the month this thing about how to manage GPS.
Oh yeah.
Who can have access to GPS information and how to use that information without making it personal. Like I've seen so many collectors have access to that and they let it get personal and it affects decision making. And so we just gotta think about that.
Or it's like, I've been watching and they're at this place or they're and it's like, and it's supposed to be broken down, but they're moving all over town. It's like, okay, it's that's beside the point.
It's kind of really, first of all, who should have access to that information?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
We got to be careful about that. But anyway, we'll cover that one on another day. But we should wrap up.
For today, a couple of things before we go. First, if you are watching us through YouTube, please like and subscribe to the station. And then, we've talked last month a little bit about cash flow modeling and cash flow forecasting, and just want to let you know that we do take appointments. We're accepting new clients for that, and that is something. It's usually 2 to 3 sessions, an hour and a half a piece, and it really can be such a valuable tool for any of you if you're thinking about growing, extending your line of credit, or if you're just brand new and kind of want to get an idea about how do I really rein in how I'm spending and what can I project. And so that's something that we do. And like I said, we are currently taking appointments for that. And then let me go ahead and put this up here. So if that's something that you would like to do, please give us a call, 903-816-0216. That's Jim's cell phone number. We give it out.
I would tell people on the cash flow modeling, like I would say, if you're a vendor listening and you bump into a dealer who's needing that kind of help early on, I think most of our dealers would say that the $400 they spent on cash flow modeling was the smartest $400 they could have spent in terms of knowing kind of what it was going to take to capitalize. Either if they're brand new and they're trying to figure out how much cash is going to take and when would I get cash positive, those are things that are helpful. And then for established dealers too, that we constantly see them, get surprised in what the calculations produce.
Absolutely.
So it's helpful to have that.
Yeah. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, please give us a call or text us at 903-816-0216 and we can get that set up.
As I said, you've got my phone number, so you can text me funny memes. So I love the funny memes.
Remember we talked about cats?
Not cats.
Scott Shumrell within seconds.
Michelle says, Jim like cat. No, I don't.
He doesn't like cats. He likes humor.
Funny memes.
Funny memes. Yeah. Just funny memes.
Memes.
All right, guys, have yourself a great Monday. Thanks so much for joining us. And we will see you on Wednesday. Have a great day, guys.